In July of 2003, which seems like a lifetime ago, I led a mission trip with a team of folks from the UU Church in Lexington, and we formed a team with liberal Baptists and a few Jews from North Carolina. We were an interstate, interreligious, intergenerational group of folks going out to do good work. We were on a mission. We went to Ecuador. We were on a mission, but maybe not really a mission. As our group began to take shape, we discussed ad infinitum whether we should call our group a mission trip. I wanted to call it a mission, but several folks did not because they thought, heaven forbid, we would sound too much like we are witnessing or evangelizing or proselytizing. And, well, UUs don't do that. I held steadfast. I wanted to call it a mission. No, it seemed that if we were on a mission, then folks in Ecuador might think we were Christians. And we did not want to be that stereotyped missionary with whom we traveled, that I had previously traveled to with Ecuador. Instead, it was thought that we should call our trip a service trip. But I held fast. I wanted to call it a mission. And I was angry with the missionaries with whom I had first gone to Ecuador. I was angry that they told the children they'd go to hell if they didn't believe in Jesus. I was annoyed that they believed that homosexuals stole the rainbow from Noah. And I was saddened when I was told it would be best if I did not lead worship again, particularly if I preached Jesus as the social radical. Yes, I wanted to go on a mission and give those conservative Christians with whom I had traveled a run for their money. And while the discussion, or perhaps the argument of who we were and what we were doing was in good humor, it soon gave way to the work itself. We soon forgot that what we called ourselves because we got busy packing up 28 trunks full of computer equipment, medicine, and school supplies. That trip to Ecuador resulted in many fond memories. Yet there is something more than memories in that trip about our work. And I had just been formally accepted into seminary at the time. And indeed, this particular adventure changed my personal theology and understanding about what it means to be Unitarian Universalist and what it means to minister with a mission. That is, minister as a verb. We community ministers believe that we are all engaged in ministry of mission to create a beloved community. We, both ordained clergy and laity, are called to minister with mission. Laity also means you. A week or so before we left on the mission, I was in a doctor's office skimming through a magazine. And at the back page of Forbes magazine, there's always a page of quotes. And it just so happened the theme of the quotes at that time was the importance of meaning of work. And one of the quotes was from Isaiah 58:10, and it said, "And so, if you spend yourselves in behalf of the hungry and satisfy the needs of the oppressed, then your light shall shine in darkness, and your night will become like noonday." Let me say that again. If you spend yourselves in behalf of the hungry and satisfy the needs of the oppressed, then your light will rise in darkness, and your night will be like noonday. I tore that corner out of the magazine so I could remember the verse. This Bible verse called to me. It really tugged me. It nudged me into wondering what would happen in our mission trip. And I knew in a way that cannot be described that there was a divine power calling to me to just go do the work. Go do the work. Since this trip, this particular verse has been my guide. if you spend yourselves in behalf of the hungry and satisfy the needs of the oppressed, then your light will rise in the darkness and your night will be like noonday. I believe this verse is true. I venture to suggest that most of us who went to Ecuador would say engaging in service or on a mission changed us. Yet it was not until a few years later that I could really begin to articulate what happened. I knew we changed. I knew I changed, but I didn't have the theological vocabulary to describe it. I was soon introduced to Richard Gilbert. In seminary, I was required to read Gilbert's book, The Prophetic Imperative. And you can look on Beacon Press in the UUA and find it. I think it's in its third publication. I love the book. My copy is the first edition, and it's held together with duct tape and a rubber band. It's full of scribble and post-it notes, so it's truly mine. Indeed, it was Richard Gilbert who introduced me to the theological concept of what he calls a seamless garment. Gilbert says that there should be no contraindication between prayer and politic, between contemplation and action, or being and doing. He insists, and I wholeheartedly agree, Gilbert insists, faith plays a part in our being and doing. Faith includes action. Yet he warns, the social without the spiritual is rudderless. The spiritual without social is vacuous. You see, spiritual and social are in dialogue. Spiritual and social are so interwoven that it's impossible to distinguish one from the other. A seamless garment, a garment made with integrity of faith and action. So what about the prophetic imperative? Gilbert describes it so beautifully and so poetically. Our spiritual values must express themselves in the world of power. Our holiness, our divine calling. It is participating in a world to make justice happen. The prophetic imperative is what we hear in those quiet hours, in that voice still and small. That voice like the pitcher that cries out for water and the person who cries out for work which is real. We want in our bones and in our hearts to tell us so. We want to savor this world, but we must serve in order to savor. And those are words of poet Marge Piercy. The prophetic imperative means do. The core message of the imperative is to make justice happen. Justice is every bit of a religious and spiritual world as it is a political word. Repeat, justice is every bit religious and spiritual as it is political. Throughout our religious history, the core message of religious prophets was about how to create a community based on a firm foundation of justice. If we do not engage in a mission to promote justice, then we are not being spiritual or religiously faithful to who we say we are. I believe the prophetic imperative is to listen to that call, and when the Spirit says do it. The imperative is a call. It is a mandate to respond to those emotions that we've inherited, those emotions of anger and grief and despair when we are called and see injustice. The prophetic imperative says you put on your seamless garment made of both faith and action and go out and do the work. I read you but one small part of Isaiah's message. There's more to his story. You see, at the time that Isaiah was preaching, the Jews had recently returned from exile in Babylon. And there was much discussion about how they should worship again in their own homeland. They wondered what they should sacrifice. They argued about how to build an altar and who should do the offerings. They argued about the minutiae of worship. And their squabbling, Isaiah told them, if you spend yourselves on behalf of the hungry and satisfy the needs of the oppressed, then your light will rise in darkness and your night will become like noonday. This is what it means to be faithful. This is what it means, in my opinion, and in my ministry. This is what it means to worship. This is what it means to put on that seamless garment. Worship is not limited to being here. Worship is mostly out there. To be faithful and to worship is to wear the seamless garment. It means praying with dirty hands. Yet worship also means sacrifice of our food, our money, our time, our physical labor, our knowledge. Responding to that prophetic imperative is not just an individual response. Rather, we respond as individuals within the greater context of our Unitarian Universalist community, that is, within our interdependent web. And when we, as individuals and community, make justice happen, everybody benefits. We know this. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. We benefit when we make justice happen. We are not our own. Yes, wearing our seamless garment is what I believe it means to be church. We should not hand off the work of social action to a committee, nor the work of clergy alone. The seamless garment is not the robe of a priest or an ordained minister. We are an ecclesia. We are an assembly of social activists. The work demanded by the prophetic imperative is a shared mission. It is shared ministry. Our mission is to engage in the world. So how do we sew our seamless garments? Well, I believe a good place to start is to unapologetically reclaiming our political or our theological vocabulary. We can reframe it what it means to be mission, to witness, to worship, and to serve. We sew our seamless garments with strong threads of action. These seamless threads make it possible to see and touch justice. How? Well, we go on a mission to make justice happen. We go on a mission to serve others, knowing that we will benefit when we do. And it may seem like our mission is impossible, yet we go anyway. This is what it means to be faithful, to go anyway, to take the first step, and then the next step. Our seamless garments are also sewn with threads that cannot be seen and are not tangible and are nor visible. They are sewn with invisible threads of love, empathy, compassion, and courage. Our seamless garments are also sewn with threads of public service, education, and witness. We serve. We serve food, we clothe, we shelter. Yet the thread of service is not strong enough by itself. Our seamless garments become the strongest when we sew them with education and public witness as well. We educate. We use our strong prophetic voices to teach that that justice is at the core of our survival. We teach that without justice we will never find peace. We teach that the integrity of our interdependent web depends on making justice happen. And we witness. Yes, we do. We teach each other what's going on in the world. We make our voices public because we live in public. We live out there. My colleague and mentor, the Reverend Elwood Sturtevant, once told me that the most important part of ministry means showing up. Yes, we show up in public to say who we are. We witness not to the oppressed with the hopes of changing them. No, we witness to the oppressors, hoping beyond possible hope that we can change their hearts. The oppressed already know what the problem is. We witness to the oppressors, hoping that beyond possible hope we can change their hearts. We witness so the public knows who we are and that we are answering the call of love. Did we, as travelers to Ecuador, wear a seamless garment? I don't know. I believe we did. We may argue about the theological name of our work, but I believe we must claim our work with words that matter. Minister as a verb, mission, witness, worship, and service, praying and worshiping with dirty hands. Now is the time for this witness. There are real threats out there that require showing up and making our voices heard. We call out injustice when we see it and we hear it. There are false prophets out there. We call out injustice when we hear it and see it. Mitch McConnell and his cadre of power mongers are unjust when they attempt to abolish health care for people who need it. Donald Trump promotes injustice every time he tweets and every time he says that we will make America great again. We hear false prophets when we say it's necessary to build a wall. There is no we when I do not participate in such nonsense. Matt Bevin is just as unjust in the way he treats teachers and reframes how poor people should not have access to health care. Yes, we need to bear witness. Witness about injustice is a thread that maintains the integrity of that spirit or that seamless garment. We have to name it when we see it, and we have to call the names of those false prophets who promote injustice, and we have to say it out loud. There is no separation of church and state. This is being faithful to our cause to make justice happen. It is our prophetic imperative. Sewing and wearing seamless garments is hard work. It's not like we just reach into our closets and pull out a seamless garment which we choose to wear for an event or for just a day. No, rather, as faithful people, we choose and are intentional about wearing such garments all day and every day. And sometimes it is discouraging, difficult, and exhausting, and sometimes the problem seems so huge that it seems easier to engage in complacency and to think our engagement and worship outside these walls will make no difference at all. And sometimes our garments begin to fray. But worship matters. Work matters. The prophet Isaiah taught his people what it means to worship. He said, go do the work. He didn't say it would be easy. But Isaiah also comforts. He said, and he knows the work required and exhausting and perhaps even life-threatening. But he comforts at the end of that chapter, saying, the Lord will guide you always. You will be like a well-watered garden, like a spring whose waters never fail. Your people will rebuild ancient ruins and raise up the age-old foundations. You will be called the repairers of the broken walls, restorers of streets and dwellings. I believe that's why we come to church. I believe that's why we should come here. I come here to worship the God of our interdependent web. The God inherent in the web of this community that reminds us that we are not alone in our work. We come to church to restore our courage to witness to the oppressors. We come to church to drink fresh water to restore ourselves. We come to church to be fed in loving community so that we can feed the community. We come to repair our seamless garments when we can once again leave here with the integrity that with our integrity and mission intact. I believe we come to church to learn to be church out there in a world that cries for us. We come to church to learn to be church out there in a world that cries out for us. We come to church to be reminded that our work is important work and that our very lives depend on our willingness to respond to that prophetic imperative that comes from deep within our souls and our bones. We come here to sew our seamless garments so that we can leave here wearing our Sunday best. Put on your seamless garment. The world is waiting for you once again. Amen.